So, I mean, since you spearfish as well, do you notice the sharks are more likely to invade your personal space when you're spearfishing versus when you're working, like diving for abalone?
Absolutely. I think they're tuned to the sound of the spear gun going off.
Oh,
And bull sharks, if you see a fish and you take aim and pull the trigger, I'm finding that the bull sharks are coming straight in just on the sound of the trigger mech going off. And a lot of blokes are finding that to be the case around Southwest Rocks and up north of Southwest Rocks around Grassy Head and Scott's Head. There's a high instance of predation of line caught fish by wreck fishers and commercial fishers up there. So, like Queensland, we're now experiencing a lot of loss of catch due to shark predation for sure.
mm, wow. So like that chunk sound underwater.
All it takes, and they're there.
Wow.
And it almost makes you second guess if you've seen one, should I pull the trigger? And no one wants to have a interaction that ends up being a bite, blood loss, the risk of injury. So unless you're sort of one of these gung-ho, young, no fear type personality people, as you get older, you get more risk adverse and you just think this is not worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And whilst it's exciting diving and there are sharks in the area, once upon a time you could safely land fish without losing it to a shark. Now you're actually feeling quite vulnerable yourself. And I know the Shark Smart app that DPI produced has got some very informative information around what not to do and what best practice looks like in reducing a negative sort of interaction with a shark. And I think it's a useful education tool, and a lot of people are quite fascinated by some of the tracking that's going on, how far some of these sharks swim in a short period of time. And that's really handy. But a lot of the places that we fish and dive are away from the beaten track where that data is being collected. So a lot of typical listing devices on public beaches, that's not where we are. We're in quite remote areas. So we don't have that, I guess, safety of a drone from a surf lifesaving club or an app that tells you there's a shark in the vicinity, because there just isn't the listing devices where we work and fish. And I don't expect that to change due to logistics and cost. So really it's up to the individual fisher or diver to do their own risk assessment on what the risks are for that day, and I guess be mindful that we're in a domain where you may come across an aggressive shark for sure.
So I guess on that then, given your experience, do you have any tips for people who might be new to spearfishing, in terms of how to properly assess the level of risk that they might experience?
It's a great question, Owen. And so my experience would tell me that the factors to look out for me, number one is water clarity. I think late afternoon and early morning are two peak periods with low light. I think they're dangerous times. Tide change is another one. I think anywhere where you come into contact with large schools of fish such as mullet or salmon in particular is another risk factor. I would never urinate in my wetsuit. I was told by an old-time abalone diver, don't ever urinate in your wetsuit. I think anyone that's had a lot of close encounters have all reported that they've been urinating in their wetsuit. So it's certainly worth avoiding that if you can. And if you're burleying to try and attract a kingfish or a snapper, and you're doing this in quite dirty water in the hope of luring a kingfish, well, potentially you could be luring a shark as well. So just probably be mindful of that. And whilst burling's a great technique to try and increase your opportunity to get something really, really good, I think having a buddy diving system where one person's watching and one person's diving is a smart move, and just looking out for one another and being aware of what's going on around you, not just what's in front of you. But you consider towing a boat to a boat ramp, being on a public road and reversing a boat down a boat ramp with cars coming and going. A pedestrian accident with a reversing boat or a car accident on the way to the boat ramp, I think is more risky. So I think it's all about putting into some sort of context. And if you try and avoid particularly dirty water and that late afternoon diving and avoid salmon schools, I think there's three practical things that you can do to mitigate risk. I think one other trick that I've picked up over the years is if you do see a shark, make eye contact with it. They tend to turn and swim off in a hurry, in a panic. I think is definitely the wrong thing to do. I think you should confront the shark, and I think you should try and maintain contact with the shark as much as you can by eyeing it. And I think try not to panic. And if you can raise attention by holding your spear gun out of the water, or try and get your boatman or a boat nearby to come and collect you. I think it's about making eye contact. Look, there are a lot of products on the market. There's Shark Shield and Shark Band, and I haven't looked into any of it. I maintain that because I spend so much time working in the ocean, if I feel the need to have some sort of shark shield attached to me that's just going to slow me down all day, I'll give it away. I'll go back to nursing and take my chances there. I think for me, with the knowledge I have and the years I've been doing this, I'm quite comfortable continuing the work that I do without having to invest in other measures to protect myself. But that's just my personal view. I think if having something like that gives you some sort of reassurance and it makes you more comfortable and gives you more enjoyment for your sport, I think go ahead and do it. It can't not help.
So you think that maintaining that confidence is a big thing as opposed to sort of freaking out a bit?
Absolutely. I believe strongly that if you're in the water with a purpose, doing something that's deliberate and not struggling, you're not a floundering boogie boarder splashing around circles waiting for a wave, that you're actually in there deliberately doing something, I think that sends a message to sharks in the area that you're doing something. And I have spoken to a lot of commercial occupational divers about this, and we all agree that we're in there doing a task, and we're working hard. You can hear the regulator, the demand valve, the bubbles, the noise. I think that in itself is a great tool to mitigate risk. But if you were splashing around looking like a wounded seal, I think it's going to raise their attention. So to go diving with a bunch of novices who aren't comfortable, not that I've ever put this to the test, but I certainly would feel a lot more comfortable that my level of risk would be a lot less, given there are other people in the water who are less confident with that. Sharks that become too close. So I'm saying any shark that, if you reach out with your spear gun and the length of your arm with the spear gun in your hand gives you 2.5 meters of reach, I would say to anybody that no shark has any business being within that radius around you. So if you reach out and your measurement of your arm extended with a spear gun, with the tip of the spear is 2.5 meters, That's the radius. That's your personal space. That belongs to you, not the shark. And that's another bit of advice that I believe that to be strongly that that's your space. So if a shark enters that space, I would consider that shark to be aggressive.
And that's actually interesting, because you noticed the change in the body position, the change in the pectoral fins and things like that. Those are clear visual cues, and I actually quite like the idea that there is a space around you that should be maintained, because 2.5 meters, most sharks can close that distance pretty instantaneously. So it's not a lot of space around you, even at 2.5 meters.
No, I think that's got to be the minimum. And, look, really, maybe you should be tripling that. But for me, I've told my son, who had a shark come within his personal space, and I felt helpless because I watched it happen, and I had a kingfish on the end of my spear, and the shark basically swam up past the kingfish and went straight to my son. I basically said, mate, they have no business being within the length of your spear space. So I wouldn't advocate shooting a shark. I think you could potentially escalate things. I think prodding it's enough. Making eye contact, prodding it. But yeah, I think discharging a spear gun on a shark, I think, can open up high risk, particularly for someone near you. The shark might start snapping, and it won't be you that bites, it'll be a mate next to you. And I think it's important also for listeners to be aware that if you feel threatened, I don't think spearing a shark is advisable. I think it has to be an absolute last resort. But I think prodding it's fine, and I think that's enough to let them know, hey, back off.
So that's the reminder for them to respect your personal space. It's sort of look them in the eye and give them a poke.
I think so. Yeah, for sure. I think the eye contact, number one. If they're going to invade your personal space, poke them. I wouldn't spear them. I think spearing them potentially is going to cause somebody to be injured.
So if you get good at spearfishing, clearly you're going to start catching fish. Do you have any tips for catch management to sort of minimize the smell of blood around you and make a shark hungry?
Yeah, so there's 3 things associated with that. One is kill your catch. Don't let it struggle. So, icky jimmy it with your knife or break its neck. Don't leave it struggling. Put it on a float away from you so that it's over there. It's not on you. Don't ever attach it to your person. And if you can, remove it from the ocean. Stick it straight in the icebox. So if the boatie can come over and take the fish and put it in the icebox, that's the best thing to do. But yeah, definitely don't have fish on your person. And I think it's important to actually kill the fish. Don't leave it struggling. I think the biggest thing is, if you're interested in spearfishing, I think it'd be really healthy for people to consider joining a spearfishing club and getting to know some experienced members and learning from them, and wherever possible, diving with other experienced members, because it's the quickest way you'll learn. And I think it's a great sport. Fishing in general is a great sport. And I know there are millions of people out there that will agree with what I'm saying. It's a great sport. We love fishing and we love being out in nature. So I don't want to turn people off. I think it's just important that you're aware and do your own risk assessment on the day, and you should have a great day and catch something great and get home safely.